Welcome to TNT Episode 9, Chronicles of Narnia book, We Don't Know.
Yeah.
So what book are we on?
So long about this and we can't figure out what book it is.
I don't know. Well, let's just say what we've covered so far.
Okay.
We have covered The Magician's Nephew.
Book 6.
Okay, we're 1. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Book 1.
Or Book 2. And The Horse and His Boy.
Which comes next.
Exactly. And so...
We're not really sure what number 1. I'm saying that we're probably on number 17 and a half.
Yeah, whatever. It doesn't really matter as long as you read them, as we keep saying.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I will say is the next book that we're going to cover, Prince Caspian, does tie in with the whole chronology of Narnia.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Horse and His Boy page.
Chapin inside The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, if you remember.
Yes. And
the official Narnia chronology.
The official Narnia chronology, yes. So The Horse and His Boy took place within The Lion,
The Witch, and
the Witch and the Wardrobe, so to speak. It's called The Secret Millennium. A millennium means 1,000 years.
It's a long time for nothing to be known what's going on.
From the year 1015 to the year 2303.
Those are the years where nothing was written, so we don't know exactly what happened. There's a couple mentions at the end of The Horse and His Boy of, like Ram the Great, I think was the king that came right after.
Yeah, I don't even remember reading anything about that. But
it was like in the epilogue or something. And then the Queen Swan White was just somebody who came later. I don't even remember where that came in. But
yeah. So
basically, we don't know what happened.
There's a lot of years that go by,
and a lot of stuff happens.
Right. So when we get to Prince Caspian, the Pevensey children, that's what I call
what they're now known as. I don't think they're ever referred to that in the language.
No. Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, in case you didn't know who we were talking about. They actually come back into Narnia after a very, 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 very long time in Narnia's history.
And like a whole year to them.
Yeah, a year in our world. And like 1,000 years in the Narnia world. Mm-hmm. And they come back and... they actually have been called back into Narnia. They didn't know it, but they were called back at the sound of a horn because the Narnians are trying to take back their country.
And it's actually kind of difficult to explain the order of how everything happens because it's kind of told in flashbacks in the book.
True.
In the movie, they kind of just try to put all the events as they're happening. And the Walden Media, once again, like, this is... a lot of people like the Walden Media Prince Caspian movie. I don't so much. It's a nice movie, but...
Tell us how you really feel. Could you be more upfront?
I don't like it very much. I find it boring. I feel it doesn't capture the spirit of the book, and...
Yeah.
It's an okay movie as a movie.
And I think we agree on the first movie that they did with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was closer to the book. Yeah, they got further and farther away from the spirit of the books as they went on. I would encourage you definitely to read this book, even if you've seen the movie, because there's a lot more in there.
It's a completely different experience.
Yeah, the characters and the themes that come out are really good, and you miss some of that in the movie. But they're called back to Narnia to help them rescue the land from a man named Miraz, who...
He's a Telmarine, which not Narnian.
Yeah, it's a human, basically,
it's a human.
from our world.
So they're humans, and not Narnians. They're from another place. They invaded Narnia. They drove all the Narnian talking creatures and mythical creatures into hiding or killed them. So this is a long time later when the Telmarine Prince Caspian runs away from his evil uncle who just had a son, and someone Miraz, who he wants his son to be king, so he's going to kill Caspian. Caspian runs away. He gets found by Narnians. And they say, well, he is a human. Humans are supposed to rule Narnia. We'd rather somebody who's an enemy of our enemy than our enemy. So he joins them, and then he uses a magical horn that Susan had and calls them into Narnia, and they come into Narnia. And then one of Caspian's men meets them and takes them to him.
Yeah, that's basically the overall plot.
And that's basically the pacing of the movie, unfortunately.
one of the things Taylor is really interested in is that C.S. Lewis likes to take mythology and mythological themes from literature and tie that into his thinking and into the world of Narnia. And that comes out in this book where you actually
especially.
you have mythological characters. I don't know if
you have a lot more like pagan mythology in this book than any others, mostly because honestly, it's mostly that and not so much the Narnian stuff. And Aslan doesn't really do things directly in this book. He does it indirectly by the mythological creatures and everything a lot.
Right, and one of those mythological characters is Bacchus,
who was a Greco-Roman god of the harvest.
Yeah, and he's in there. But again, I don't know that that's in the movie.
They didn't
so
really.
much.
They put the river god thing in the movie. That was about it.
Yeah, that was about it. So, so you said that the gods and goddesses is kind of how it ties into mythology. But what did C.S. Lewis think about mythology in relation to Christianity? And
he actually wrote an article, backing up a little bit, when he was still an atheist, as we've talked about before. He
used to be an atheist.
He said to Jared Tolkien, Christianity has a lot going for it, and originality is not one of them. And he compared it to a lot of the old myths of like ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia, where you have some kind of a god that dies and is resurrected. And that's a thing that a lot of people criticize Christianity about today, saying that it's just based off something like, oh, the cross is just the Ankh from Egyptian mythology.
That Zeitgeist movie kind of says that Christianity just stole everything. Yeah. So C.S. Lewis kind of had that mindset originally.
That's what he pretty much thought.
Yep.
And then when he became a Christian, he still kind of not kept the same mentality, but the same idea. And he wrote an article called Myth Became Fact. And I really tried to find the article so I could share some of it with you, but
you didn't find it, but maybe they could find it. You said it's
maybe
in
you
a
could
book,
find it. It's in a book called The God of the Docks, I believe. And if that's wrong, I'll correct it in the footnotes. But anyway, it is a really good article. I read it some years back, and he basically says that there's lots of myths in the world that have different aspects to them that are all fulfilled in Jesus. That Jesus' birth and death and resurrection is a myth, but it's a true myth. It's a myth in what it's portraying and the symbolism of it, but it's true in that it happened in time and space and not just figurative, just happening, just story.
So rather than Christianity copying myths, he looked at worldwide myths
are
pointing...
a prophecy, not really a basic kind of a prophecy, I guess, that Jesus fulfilled the myths. He fulfilled the archetype of the dying God and the atonement, which a lot of cultures had a myth of, because he believed that it was just something that the human heart knew was true, and so they would express it through these myths, and that Jesus fulfilled them.
Or humans just had this reminiscent knowledge of maybe things that had been told in time past, and where that knowledge came from, maybe people don't really know, but it all points to something that was fulfilled in Christ.
And I think that's just a really amazing idea, and it really comes through in Prince Caspian. You have Bacchus and the nymphs and the dryads and everything, and you have some of that in the other books too, but you really see most of it in Prince Caspian, and really not much after that. But I think Susan says something along the lines of, Bacchus would really frighten me if Aslan wasn't here, but really they all, when Aslan is there, they all obey him. They don't do anything without asking his permission. They ask him what to do. And even though I said Aslan doesn't do things directly, they are obviously his servants.
Yes. Well, that's an interesting take on mythology and how it ties into C.S. Lewis. So the more you read these stories, the more there is to discover on so many levels.
Right.
Well, let's talk about the teaching themes from this book. We like to take each of these books and look at the things that it teaches, because that's part of what he was doing in writing these stories. So the first one is that there is faith that some people have and others have a lack of faith or unbelief when it comes to Aslan and the stories that they've heard from Narnia's past.
Until now, all the characters pretty much knew for sure that Aslan was going to come. In Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it was just a prophecy. They hadn't seen him, but a lot of, it sounds like Mr. Thomas, for example, had seen him, and they were sure he was going to come, they just didn't know when. Whereas,
yeah, it's almost like the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was like almost the time period of the Old Testament to the first coming of Jesus, because when Aslan appears in that book, that's when he comes and he gives his life. But now it's been 1,000 years since that whole time, and that's just a distant memory. Prince Caspian hears about Aslan as a boy. His nurse tells him, and then Dr. Cornelius tells about him, and about the animals, the talking animals. But he had never seen any of this, but he still believes that they're true. And then later on, Truffle Hunter
a lot of the Narnians don't really believe that Aslan is going to come, but some of them do.
Yes, and Truffle Hunter, I was just going to say, is a badger.
Yes, Truffle Hunter is the badger, and then...
Not that he badgers people, I mean, he's actually a badger, and he believes that Aslan's going to come, even when they call for him on the horn, or they call for help with the magic horn, and help doesn't come right away, he still continues to believe. So there's that theme of some people believe based on the old stories, which I think is parallel to, you read the stories in the Bible. Do you believe? Or are you someone who looks at that and really scoffs or just has trouble believing? So you see those two different kinds of people in the story. Another teaching theme is the idea of trusting and following even when other people don't. Even when other people are against you. And that happens with Lucy.
Yeah.
Because
you wouldn't really expect it if based on what you've seen in other books, but the characters are a little bit deeper.
They're dynamic. And Lucy has more than, she believes very easily and very strongly. So she sees Aslan actually before anybody else. She always sees everything before everybody else. That's a running theme. But Lucy sees Aslan, and he indicates that she should follow him, I think, but she doesn't get the others to really believe. They don't really believe her.
She doesn't really push it that much.
No.
She just kind of listens to them.
She kind of caves into peer pressure and follows the party that she's with, her brothers and her sister and a dwarf, and so she keeps going with them. Later, Aslan comes again and kind of confronts her and says, this time you need to follow me, even if the others don't. And it's hard for her. She goes to wake up everybody. And
he doesn't just tell her to come now. He tells her to go
back,
and
wake them up. And she's like, but they may not listen to me. And he says, do it anyway.
And then come back by yourself if they don't listen to you, which is what you should have done in the first place.
So the lesson there is really powerful, that sometimes, again, relating Aslan to Jesus, you might see what you need to do. You might see that this is the path I need to take, but others may think you're crazy. Others may not want to go with you, or maybe even oppose you. But even if you look stupid, I think...
Even if it's your brothers and sisters.
Yeah. Not that they would ever think you're stupid. But whoever it is that's against you shouldn't keep you from following what you know you ought to do.
Which is a pretty heavy theme. That's pretty much what Jesus said, and it's one of the things that isn't really talked about that much by people. You generally just hear the... everybody is welcome. And,
right.
Which, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's also the side that there's plenty of people who aren't going to accept it, and that shouldn't sway your decision.
No.
Now, another theme is that the ends don't justify the means. And we see that it's a scene that they kind of took a little bit of liberty with in the Walden Media movie, but...
I don't even remember this scene in the movie, but it is an interesting one.
Caspian, he's blown the horn, and they don't know whether the prophecy will be fulfilled and help will come. They're kind of wondering, will it be the kings and queens, which it did end up being, or will it be Aslan, or they just didn't know what was going to happen, and they've been waiting for a while, and they're kind of getting discouraged. And so...
And they're in a very dangerous position.
Very dangerous. They're surrounded on all sides by the enemy. They're in this ancient burrow, which was underneath the stone table, which is hinted to have been there from before the stone table was even put in place. So that's kind of never really explained, but it's something very, very old.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're in here, they're really holed up, they don't know what to do, and there's two main dwarves in the story. There's Knickerbrick and Trumpkin.
Yeah.
Trumpkin is the good dwarf he's the one who went and he found the kings and queens and brought them back. Knickerbrick, he's not really shown as evil, he's kind of shown as sympathetic, but just kind of falling into temptation.
Actually, interesting, in light of where we're going with all this, Trumpkin actually had a harder time believing in magical powers.
Mm-hmm.
He actually was more agnostic,
Mm-hmm.
but he was quicker to side with the good side, and
he was willing to do what Caspian wanted to because
he was very noble.
He knew that's who he was supposed to be following, even if he didn't believe it. He would do it because that's what Caspian told him, and in the end, he did.
Yeah.
Well, of course, Aslan showed himself to him, so of course he's going to believe him. But he was.
But he immediately honored Aslan too, which showed where his heart was. But Knickerbrick is actually a very much of a pragmatic person. He believes in magic, but he wants to use whatever is.
At the very beginning, when they were talking about freeing Narnia, he was talking about the evil creatures, which that's kind of a little bit weird in this book because some of the creatures that were very evil in Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe are now good. You see a Minotaur is on their side, Minotaur, which you wouldn't think that considering Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
They're not very cute.
They're not very cute.
Yes, I thought it was only cute animals that were good. But
So he had offered to call some of the evil creatures at their side, and Truffle Hunter said, we don't want that sword on our side. But so now he says to Caspian, we've tried your way, the good way, and now I really feel we need to try my way, which is the way I think will work. So he calls his friends a werewolf and a witch kind of person, and they talk about drawing the circle and summoning the ghost of the White Witch, or the White Witch, somehow getting her to come, and I'd actually like to maybe read for you the bit of that scene so you can see what goes on and how they react to it.
Yeah, you'll get to hear how the characters really interact here and how they view things. What do you mean? Said Caspian at last. I mean a power so much greater than Aslan's that it held Narnia spellbound for years and years, if the stories are true. The White Witch? Cried three voices all at once, and from the noise Peter guessed that three people had leapt to their feet. Yes, said Knickerbrick, very slowly and distinctly. I mean the witch. Sit down again. Don't all take fright at a name as if you were children. We want power, and we want a power that will be on our side. As for power, do not the stories say that the witch defeated Aslan, and bound him, and killed him on that very stone which is over there, just beyond the light? But they also say that he came to life again, said the Badger sharply. Yes, they say, answered Knickerbrick, but you'll notice that we hear precious little about anything he did afterwards. He just fades out of the story. How do you explain that, if he really came to life? Isn't it much more likely that he didn't, and that the stories say nothing more about him, because there was nothing more to say? So I think there's a lot of interesting analysis of how people think there that Lewis is showing about how Knickerbrick here is basically saying, well, Aslan, yeah, there's a story about his power, and there's a story about him rising again, but not very much is said about him after that particular event, and so maybe it was just made up.
Which is what we hear today a lot of times.
Yeah, I think he's obviously making a point about the view that many people have about Jesus. That, well, this is just a made-up story. Yeah, they say he rose again, but then you don't hear much else about Jesus. And actually, right after that, the response is that even though Aslan didn't continue to appear, it says that he established kings and queens, said Caspian. So I think that also points to the idea of Jesus established people, even though he didn't continue to be here on Earth. He established people to carry on his reign.
Now, something that is a fairly big difference between this and the Walden Media movie, you're going to hear me say that 1,000 times. So, in the book, Caspian really doesn't want to have anything to do with it. The good animals say no, and they fight, and that's when the kings and queens come through, and they kill the evil animals, and they go on from there. In the movie...
You don't think you like this part?
No, not really. It's not even that big of a issue, I guess, but they don't really have a problem with it. They summon the White Witch.
Yeah.
And then she tempts them to set her free by giving her blood and...
Well,
yes, whatever.
It's creative license.
Yeah. And then I think Edmund breaks the thing, and
I barely remember that.
They were just on... Caspian was on the edge of working with the White Witch.
I see. They were trying to build suspense.
If it was...
Yeah.
If Edmund hadn't been there, Caspian would have joined the White Witch.
Yeah. So, just kind of get back to it, though. It's Nickabrick, really, who's the one who's tempted in this story and ends up really succumbing to that evil temptation. One last teaching theme that we wanted to talk about was Aslan calling people to follow him. And I noticed this at the end of the book, where there's even children in different scenes, and he basically he appears in their town. And I remember this one girl, Gwendolyn, who I think that her teacher and classmates, when they see the lion, first they think she's lying because she says she saw a lion. The teacher chides her for that a couple of times, and then he actually appears.
It said a couple of times in the book, there's no such thing as lions.
Yeah.
They won't even...
So she, the teacher gets scared and runs away along with the class, but Aslan is very kind to Gwendolyn, and she's quick to follow him. And that's what I notice, is there are some people that are quick to follow Aslan, and others that are scared to death of him. And we see that the Telmarines, a lot of the older people especially that have been there a long time, they tend to be more cynical, and they tend to be complain about Aslan, or even to be fearful of him, to think that he's trying to do something to trick them or something like that. So there's a lot of hostility toward Aslan with some people, but then other people are really quick, especially children.
We see, though, something that we see throughout all the books, that people accuse C.S. Lewis of being racist towards, like, the Colormans was, and I'm not really going to give away too much because it's kind of a spoiler for the final book, if there is even a final book, if we can agree on which one comes last.
The final, what's it called?
The last
battle.
So I guess we can agree that one comes last. But they accuse him of being racist towards Middle Easterns and the Colormans, but no matter what the people group or profile is, there's always somebody who will turn to follow Aslan, even in this group of Telmarines where most of them are really being all cynical. One of them says, I'll go. I'll do what you want me to. And pretty much whenever there's a group of people that are as a group being...
It doesn't matter where they're from, who they're with.
There's always... So C.S. Lewis really did believe that Jesus' gift was for everybody. Yeah, you're right. And one other person I wanted to mention was this old woman at the end of the story, that he goes into her house because she's dying, and he ends up healing her. And she says, when she says, "Oh, I've been waiting for you. I've been wanting to see you, and now I finally can." And she's actually thinking maybe he's going to take her. He says, "Have you come to take me?" And he says, "Yes, but not the long journey."
Not the long journey, not heaven, but I'm here to actually heal you, is basically what he says. And when he heals her, it turns out that that was actually Caspian's nurse. I just gave a huge spoiler. I'm sorry, but it was such a good part of the story.
Wait, there's not anything that's going to go...
Yeah. So it all comes full circle then. You know, Caspian's nurse ends
all
up
those
meeting
ends are tied up.
But you do see the idea of Jesus coming. Just like when he was on earth, you see this in the Gospels. people had different reactions to them, and you even see Jesus healing people, and you see very much this kind of thing going on with Aslan.
That's all we've got for today. So, thanks for watching. Subscribe, spread the word, and see you next time.